Have you ever heard the chilling whisper that AIDS was not a natural disease? It's a theory that it was cooked up in a lab, a sinister plot unleashed upon the world. This idea has spread like wildfire for decades, fueling fear and mistrust. But what if the truth is something else entirely? What if the story of HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, is not one of human malice, but one of a long, complex journey through nature? Today we're going to peel back the layers of this persistent conspiracy and look at what science actually tells us. We will explore the real origins of one of modern history's most devastating pandemics. The story begins not in a sterile laboratory, but deep within the lush rainforests of Central and West Africa. Our closest relatives in the animal kingdom, chimpanzees and other primates, hold the key to this mystery. For a very long time, these animals have carried their own version of the virus, known as simian immunodeficiency virus, or SIV. SIV is remarkably similar to HIV, but in most of its natural primate hosts, it doesn't cause a severe illness like AIDS. The animals and the virus have coexisted for thousands, maybe even millions of years, reaching a kind of evolutionary balance. Scientists have found many different strains of SIV in various monkey and ape species across Africa. Think of it like a large, diverse family of viruses, each adapted to its specific host. The specific strain that led to the most common type of HIV in humans, called HIV-1 group M, has been traced back to a subspecies of chimpanzee found in Cameroon. So, the big question is, how did a virus that was seemingly harmless in chimpanzees make the jump to humans and become so deadly? The answer lies in a concept scientists call zoonotic spillover. This is when a pathogen, like a virus, crosses from an animal species into the human population. It's not a rare event. Diseases like the flu, Ebola, and even the recent COVID-19 are all results of zoonotic spillovers. In the case of SIV, the most widely accepted scientific theory is the hunter theory, also known as the cut hunter theory. For generations, people living in and around the African rainforests have hunted primates for food, a practice known as obtaining bushmeat. During the process of hunting, butchering, and preparing these animals, hunters could easily get cut or exposed to the animal's blood. If a chimpanzee was infected with SIV, the virus could enter the hunter's bloodstream through a cut or wound. This single moment of transmission, a microscopic virus crossing from one species to another, was likely the starting point. It probably happened many times over many years, but most of these transmissions would have been dead ends. The virus might not have been able to replicate well in its new human host, or the infected person might not have passed it on. But at some point, likely in the early 20th century, a specific strain of SIV from a chimpanzee successfully adapted to its new human environment. Once inside a human, the virus began to change, to mutate. This is what viruses do. They evolve to become better at surviving and spreading in their new host. Through a series of small genetic changes, SIV transformed into the virus we now know as HIV. This new virus was perfectly suited to target the human immune system. It's a very system designed to protect us. Scientific evidence strongly supports this natural origin story. Researchers have used a technique called a molecular clock to trace the virus's history. By analyzing the genetic makeup of different HIV samples collected over many decades, they can estimate how fast the virus mutates. Working backward, they can pinpoint when the common ancestor of all current HIV-1 strains likely first appeared. These genetic calculations place the initial jump from chimpanzee to human sometime around the 1920s. In the region of what is now Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. This timeline and location perfectly aligned with the hunter theory and the historical context of the era. In the early 20th century, Central Africa was undergoing immense social and economic change under colonial rule. Large cities like Kinshasa, then called Leopoldville, were growing rapidly. People from rural areas were migrating to these new urban centers in search of work, creating dense, bustling populations. This urbanization created the perfect storm for a new virus to spread. Increased travel along new railways and rivers meant an infected person could carry the virus over vast distances. Social changes and the growth of commercial sex work provided more opportunities for the virus, which is primarily transmitted through bodily fluids to pass from person to person. For decades, the virus spread silently and slowly, largely unnoticed. Its long incubation period, the time between infection and the appearance of serious symptoms, meant people could carry and transmit HIV for years without knowing they were sick. Early cases were likely misdiagnosed as other known illnesses. Then, in 1981, the world started to notice. Doctors in the United States reported clusters of a rare lung infection and an aggressive cancer in young, otherwise healthy men. Their immune systems were inexplicably collapsing. This mysterious illness was initially given many names, but it would eventually become known as acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS. It wasn't until 1983 that scientists in France and the United States independently isolated the virus responsible, HIV. This discovery was a monumental breakthrough, but it also opened the door for conspiracy theories to take root. The idea that AIDS was man-made began to circulate shortly after the virus was identified. One of the most prominent theories was that HIV was created in a U.S. government laboratory as a biological weapon. Proponents of this theory pointed to Fort Detrick, a military bioweapons research facility, as the supposed source. Another popular version of the theory claimed that HIV was accidentally created during the development of polio vaccines in the 1950s. This theory suggested that the vaccines, which were grown in monkey kidney cells, were contaminated with SIV, which then infected millions of people. These theories sound alarming, and they prey on a natural distrust of authority in complex science. However, when you examine them with scientific rigor, they quickly fall apart. Let's start with the genetic evidence. If HIV were engineered in a lab, its genetic code would show signs of manipulation. We would expect to see pieces of other known viruses stitched together, or genetic sequences that don't look like anything found in nature. But the genetic makeup of HIV tells a very different story. Its genome is a perfect match for a virus that evolved naturally from SIV. It contains all the evolutionary fingerprints of a virus that has been adapting and changing over a long period, not something assembled from a kit. The family tree of HIV and SIV strains is complex and branching, exactly what we'd expect from a natural process of evolution, not a single man-made creation. Furthermore, the polio vaccine theory has been thoroughly and completely debunked. Scientists went back and tested preserved samples of the original polio vaccine lots from that era. They found no trace of either HIV or SIV. Additionally, the type of monkey whose cells were used to create the vaccine was the rhesus macaque, an Asian monkey. The sieve found in these monkeys is a distant relative and could not have mutated into the HIV that caused the pandemic. The origin is firmly traced to African primates, not Asian ones. So, if the scientific evidence is so clear, why do these conspiracy theories persist? Part of the reason is the social and political climate in which AIDS emerged. The pandemic initially and disproportionately affected marginalized communities, leading to stigma and discrimination. For some, it was easier to believe in a conspiracy than to confront the uncomfortable realities of the disease and societal prejudice. These theories offered a simple, albeit incorrect, explanation for a complex and terrifying phenomenon. They provided a clear villain to blame, whether it was a government or a pharmaceutical company. But blaming a shadowy cabal distracts from the real issues and hinders our ability to fight the pandemic effectively. Understanding the true natural origin of HIV is crucial. It helps us understand how pandemics begin and allows us to be better prepared for future zoonotic spillovers, which scientists agree are inevitable. The story of HIV is not a tale of human evil, but a powerful and humbling lesson about our relationship with the natural world. It shows how a tiny, unseen virus can travel from the depths of a forest, adapt, and change the course of human history.
Oh.
The journey from CIV and a single chimpanzee to a global HIV pandemic was a slow, accidental process driven by a combination of biological chance and human social development. It's a story written in genetic code and confirmed by decades of painstaking research. The truth is not always as sensational as the conspiracy, but it is far more important. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the facts behind the fiction. If you found this exploration of science and history insightful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Documentary Ariel for more deep dives into the truths that shape our world.